What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully, everyone is having a beautiful day. Hopefully, you're getting ready for the draft because as of recording this on Monday, we are 10 days away. It is right around the corner. Next Thursday, we'll be here. Before we know it, we got Easter this weekend, and then boom, it's draft week in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Very, very exciting. But today, I want to talk about someone that's not draft eligible. One of the biggest stories right now, and you could argue the biggest story in football is this NIL Nico Tennessee situation. Colin and we did a podcast yesterday after the Masters, and we discussed it a little bit. But I've given it 2 or 3 days to think about, read a bunch of articles, just of people that know what's going on, and wrote down some of my thoughts. So we will dive into that. With Rory McIlroy winning the Masters, and I did huge ratings. At one point in time, it peaked with almost 20 million people watching. I mean, beside football, no other sport sniffs that. And I think a big reason is because we were so invested into the story. And I think football has several guys that we are really, really invested into the question of, are they ever going to get it done? Can they pull this off? Can they win a championship? And I think there are four clear guys right now, two are players, two are coaches, that I think fall under that category. Are going to be driving storylines moving forward, and then a couple other things football wise. We try to do something regarding the draft every single day. I saw a headline today that I think falls under the category of, yeah, I think we are seeing a massive shift, and I think people in the NFL are going to have to get ready that the 40-yard dash might continue to not get run by a lot of players, which is crazy. I mean, I always say fast guys should run, but sometimes fast guys say no, not even worth it. And clearly, we'll dive into it because it happened again today. But before we dive in to some football and the NIL situation that everyone's talking about, I do need to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Listen, I got a lot of friends, a lot of homies in Sacramento in the Bay Area. They got a couple play-in basketball games coming up right around the corner. So the Warriors, Tuesday night, hosting the Memphis Grizzlies. Hopefully they win. They're in the playoffs. You want to go to any of these playoff games? Playoff basketball is unreal. I started going to playoff basketball games in, I think 2000 was my first one, when the Kings were on the up and coming. They were an up and coming team with like Jason Williams and Chris Webber. It was awesome. Took on the Mavericks and young Dirk and Mark Cuban led Mavs. And then from there, Warriors games. Playoff basketball, home team environments are just, it's pretty incredible. I would say the same thing for the NHL. I've never been to an NHL playoff game, but they sure look incredible on television. So if you get the opportunity to do this, your team's playing where you live, I got you covered. Game time, you got to use them. We got baseball in full throttle now. You got concert season. You have comedy shows going on. They got you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN, that's JOHN, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It's funny to see some of these thoughts when it comes to NIL. And we got a DM, I think last week, that said, like, everyone's perspective on NIL is different. Someone like me that went to Cal Poly, that when I moved to Philadelphia, I'd have to tell people just I went to Cal because no one would understand what Cal Poly was. It's essentially like San Diego State, but in the middle of, of the California. And it's not a big football school. We're D1AA. So if you go to a school like USC, like Texas, like Alabama, like Ohio State, like Michigan, you treat them like you would if you're a 49er fan or an Eagle fan or a Patriot fan. Like, that's your squad. So you don't really care about NIL unless a guy leaves you because you're not paying him enough, and then you're like double middle fingers. And people like me that are kind of like a nomadic college football fan, I gravitated toward the SEC during the Saban era because I thought it was really enjoyable football. Not going to lie, like Ohio State, Michigan is just an incredible game. I'm dialed for that bad boy. But I don't really have, a horse in the race with most of these teams when they're playing unless I'm gambling on it. So my take has been pretty like, yeah, I don't care. Pay him what you want to pay him. If you don't want to pay him, it's up to him to find if he can get more. And this is just a general take when it comes to NIL. But I think, and Colin talked about this, and he's right. It's really easy. And I would say the media always tends to be pro player, pro, and definitely now college, which was understandable forever when it came to college because they weren't getting paid above the table. They were definitely getting paid below the table. And, in college basketball, Jay Billis would go on these rants. It's like, Jay, Coach K has been paying people for 20 years. I didn't care, but we can't be naive and act like these guys aren't getting broken off. Now, in football, because of the amount of guys, it was never like paying a top basketball recruit because that individual had a much bigger impact. And if you did nail it, like you could win a national championship, right? In football, it is so hit or miss. You got so many players in a recruiting class. So the NIL landscape, a lot of coaches got out of paying big time recruits. Why? Because it's a complete crapshoot. If you go the last 20 years and just type in 2016, top 50 recruits in the country, any year, you're going to see some big time names, some guys that go on to be NFL stars, get drafted really high. And you're going to see a lot of guys like, who's that? What was that guy's deal? This guy even playing the NFL? This guy even playing college? So it is a complete crapshoot. And a couple years ago, Tennessee gave Nico a 4-year contract worth $8 million. Now, he was a prize recruit, a big time dude out of Los Angeles. But I think we all have to agree, like, that's pretty ballsy. There is no guarantee that that guy's going to be a star. In his first year, he didn't even play. He redshirted. So they paid him $2 million to ride the pine and be the backup. And then in his second year, he started. Tennessee had a good year. They were a running team and a good defense. He threw one touchdown against Arkansas, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. One total touchdown versus those opponents. I would say, given the hype, he had a pretty underwhelming year, which historically in college football, yeah, he's a redshirt freshman. It's like, yeah, he threw 20 touchdowns, 9 picks, did not play that well against top competition, is a work in progress. No shit. It's called college football. He's 19, 20 years old. It's most guys aren't just hitting the ground running and just Johnny football day one. It is difficult. So, like, as a player, totally understandable. In the SEC, the speed, a little different than playing high school ball in LA. But, like, I think everyone is so quick. The takes of everyone's always getting screwed. And that is something that I think social media, a lot of people have always had those takes. But when you get on social media, I would say the victimhood mentality, everyone's getting fucked financially in terms of like college sports is a universal theme. And in certain situations, like, no, this guy's actually not getting screwed. He got an incredible deal because even if he had failed, if he hadn't been a good player, he was going to get $8+ million in a state where there's no state income tax. It's like, that's a pretty good place to do business. And here's the thing that I feel bad for about this kid, based on the information, all the articles that I've read, is his dad's leading the charge. And I think sometimes when you're too, I say it all the time, like when a wife, a father, a sister, a brother says something really stupid, whether it's at a game or on social media regarding the person in their life that they're close with, that they're family to, that's playing in the game, like, yeah, they're emotional. They are a little closer to this than me or you. I give them a break. I don't hold them to the same standards as like the general manager or just like some random media member. It's like that's their brother. I hope that they are a little over the top in their support of the guy. But the father negotiating this deal, credit to whoever originally negotiated this deal. Fantastic deal. And it looked like it had a chance to be a win-win. Hell, I was really bullish on this guy early in the season. You see the physical attributes, you see the big arm. But as the season went, like there's no way to dispute it. He wasn't that good. And I've seen a lot of people in college football talk about this happens in the NFL all the time. It was bound to happen in college football. Average players in the NFL do not hold out. You know why? They would fucking get cut. They would be told to pack your locker and leave. You know who holds out in the NFL? Nick Bosa, Jamar Chase, Trent Williams, elite players coming off elite years. Hell, we argue when a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who had 75 catches and 1,500 yards and was the number one wide receiver for a Super Bowl team, is like, is he good enough to hold? And they're technically holding in. But like, you never see, it's like, yeah, this guy's a marginal right guard, not happy with his $3 million contract, looking for six. He's holding out because his ass would be sent packing immediately. And yet, when this Nico thing happened, everyone brought all these takes. It's pretty simple. They got really greedy. And I think sometimes, and we all fall under this category of like, listen, I love business. I love doing deals. I love everything on this podcast and doing business with different partners and generating revenue. But not everything all the time can be about money. I surely, like many of you, have to do some things professionally where it's like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get paid doing this. Or, I could probably make more money doing this, but there are other benefits. And I think when you look at the Nico situation, it'd be one thing if he was getting 100 grand. Starting quarterback in the SEC, it's like, yeah, his contract is way out of whack. It's like, bro, you signed for over $2 million. It's like, what are you comparing yourself against Carson Beck? Well, 2 years ago, Carson Beck was really, really good. You have yet to have a really, really good season. And clearly, part of, Lamar took a lot of shit for this when his mother was his agent. It's like, does she know what he's doing? Is this the right thing to do? Like, are you too close to all this? Now it's all worked out. You know why? Lamar's an all-time great talent. He's a multiple-time MVP. Like, when you're that good, it doesn't matter if I'm your agent, his mom's his agent, or Drew Rosenhaus the agent. It's gonna work itself out. But in a situation like this, when you go, yeah, we were gonna need a little more money. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna need some more fucking touchdowns then. I'm gonna need a little more production because I got no problem paying you if you produce. And I think you look at this guy and his team, they are living in la la land. They really are. And this notion of, it just kind of wears on you that everyone is constantly getting screwed. That, oh, this guy's really getting effed. No, actually, he's not. Looks like a pretty good deal to me. And I think most people at the highest levels of whatever their profession is, when there's a lot of money on the line, there is a balance of like, okay, you're doing a good job negotiating, you're making a good amount of money. It's like, well, now are you going to get greedy? And you could argue, what is the line for greed? And that's a fair question. It depends on the individual situation. I do think it's fair to say, after the year that this guy had, that like asking for double a raise based on his level of play was kind of comical. And my favorite part about this story is when his dad's shopping him around, Dan Lanning gets on the horn and calls Josh Heupel in the program and says, just to let you know, your quarterback is shopping himself around. And I give Josh Heupel credit. Now, I don't know if it's as simple as this is BS, we're cutting you. There were probably some other variables. Maybe they tried to talk it out. But regardless how it went down the last 48, 6, 7 days of this process last week, they said kick rocks. See ya. Adios. And I do wonder, like, this is the second transfer portal. A lot of teams have quarterbacks. A lot of really good teams have quarterbacks. And this is what I'm talking about being greedy. He was in a spot where this team is going to compete for the playoffs every single year he chooses to stay in college football. Unless he improved a lot, like he wasn't coming out in the draft. So he was going to be in college football for several more years. And he was in an incredible spot with a coach who is a quarterback and an offensive mind, with a team that pretty clearly is really good on defense and is going to continue to be in a place that is unreal to play college football in, you could argue, the biggest spot, the SEC. And now he's not allowed to transfer into the SEC without having to sit out a rule because the SEC took some initiative. I don't know whether they did this last year or a couple years ago. That the second transfer portal window, you're not allowed to transfer within conference and play immediately. So that's not on the table. And you look at Oregon, like they clearly don't want him. Ohio State, like, are they going to be interested in this? Michigan just paid a guy $12 million. Like, where Texas, they got Arch Manning. I'm just not quite sure where this guy is going to end up. I'm not going to lie. I'm rooting for them to make a lot less money in their spot. Not because I care about like the kid learning a lesson. I really don't. I don't even blame him. If I was 19 and 20 years old and clearly my dad is like quote unquote my boss slash manager, you're just kind of doing what he's telling you to do. But this is going to be a good lesson for his father potentially. Like you completely fucked your cash cow. Because let's face it, I'm sure his dad had his hand in the cookie jar. And the cookie jar was full of cookies at over $2 million a year at Tennessee. And now they're looking around. And let's face it, here's the other thing. Some of these coaches at all the good programs, again, you're leaving Tennessee to go to the good programs, kind of want to draw a line in the sand. I read an athletic article where guys like Mario Cristobal were quoted, and it was like, damn, these guys were kind of taking some shots of like, you hold out on the team, you better get out. Like these coaches are tired of this. They have no problem with the collective paying their star players. They're all about it. Why? They're getting filthy rich as well. But when it comes to football, you're holding out and you're just like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. And I do wonder if we see some of these guys now that all it takes is one, but like if your best option is UCLA football, you left the University of Tennessee to go to UCLA. Like, I'm sorry, that's laughable. The NBA 82 game grind is done. And now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for the high stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw dropping plays. Can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through the finals. Now, the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been your go-to spot for NBA player props. And that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will Curry drop 30? Will LeBron drop 40? Or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make the playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Yesterday, with it being the Masters, and I think part of this is what makes sports so great. I mean, part of the reason the SEC we talk about so much is the history behind the conference. Hell, just in the last 20 plus years, the great Florida teams, obviously the great Saban teams, now the Kirby teams, and all these different situations post NIL. It's added to the drama that is reality television, and that is sports, right? And you're only as strong in a reality television show as your, star celebrities, which in football's case are your star quarterbacks and your star position players and obviously your coaches. They play huge roles in the drama that is football. It's why so many people watch, because we're really, really invested. Obviously, we root for, most people root for a team. I would say it's a pretty high percentage in the general vicinity where you grew up. Like, why did I root for the 49ers growing up? Well, I grew up 50 an hour, depending on traffic, away from Candlestick, right? If I had grown up in Wisconsin, I'd probably been a Packer fan. If I had grown up in Texas, probably been a Cowboy fan, right? We're all typically based where we are born and grow up, or at least early on, if we move, what team is in the vicinity. And then from there, these individuals that are part of that team, like Steve Young and Jerry Rice. Hell, Steve Young, when I was a kid, all I can remember when I was really, really young, a lot of people saying, like, this guy's a failure. This guy cannot live up to Joe Montana. And you could be like, well, who can? And obviously he couldn't. Joe Montana won MVPs, won multiple Super Bowls. But when Steve Young finally won the Super Bowl in 1994, it was a really big deal for people in my life. Hell, my dad, till his dying days, not in a million years would have ever said Steve Young was even remotely as good as Joe Montana. There was a bitterness. Totally understandable. But that is men's soap opera, right? These situations in regards to the coach, the decisions, the trades, the whole thing. And I think part of it is the longer you're around, right, in a sport, part of what made John Elway's story so special is it took him forever to win the Super Bowl. And then his last 2 years, he rattles them both off. But if you followed football and you're older than me, him losing added to the drama of his career. Hell, I loved Peyton Manning when I was young. Part of what made Peyton Manning so interesting is that he couldn't beat Belichick and Tom. He couldn't do it until he did. And then everything changed. Rory McIlroy couldn't win the Masters for years, year in, year out, year in, year out. And then he finally did. And everything changed. But when I see that the tournament peaked at 19 million people and averaged almost 13 million people, well, of course it did. This guy has been in our life for 15 years. He's the biggest star in the sport. And the story of can this guy do it is the number one story in golf, kind of by a mile. And I think when you look at football, we have a lot of those individuals going right now when it comes to quarterbacks and coaches. Can this guy ever do it? And until they actually do it, the answer is simply no. And I think a lot of people go, I don't know. It was like that. Hell, when I got to Andy Reid, he had already built up a decade worth of, yeah, this guy can't get it done in the biggest games. And then hell, he got fired and had to go to Kansas City. And for the first 5 or 6 years, like, Andy Reid, really good coach, but never can be a Super Bowl champion. And then Patrick Mahomes comes up. Now looking back, he's been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years and won 3 of them. So it's like, could this guy not get it done? Or just like, well, he had quarterbacks that weren't quite as good. Now, you could argue there were a lot of variables, but once you win, it's crazy how different the narrative changed. And sometimes when you're an individual like Aaron Rodgers, the way we talk about him, no one can ever say he's not a champion. You can't discuss him like he's James Harden, even though he's had a lot of seasons where he's been remarkable, put up incredible stats, won MVPs, and then felt like he left you wanting a little more in the playoffs, especially the second act when LaFleur got there. It's like, wanted a little more there. I thought this was the year. But at the end of the day, he won the Super Bowl in 2010, so you can't really say anything. Tom Brady, year 2, in the league, year 1 starting, boom, Super Bowl champion. Like, just check that box. Mahomes, second year starting, boom, win Super Bowl. Like, he's just a champion. And you look at the other 2 quarterbacks, I think there are 4 guys that fall into the category of what Rory just accomplished and shut everyone up. Because there were a lot of people like, he's never going to do it. You're crazy if you bet on him. That's all I heard. You're crazy if you bet on Rory McIlroy. I really wanted to, and I didn't because I got cold feet. Luckily, I've been in the stock market long enough that I don't hold on to things that I wanted to do that I didn't do. Just let it go. Sometimes, and hell, if I would have bet on him, he probably would have lost. But I think there are 4 individuals, 2 quarterbacks and 2 coaches, that until they do it, it's actually going to add to the interest. And I think when you look at the 2 quarterbacks, it's pretty clear who they are, right? And I would rank them 2 Lamar Jackson, 1 Josh Allen. And the reason I have Lamar Jackson number 2 is like he just hasn't played that well in the playoffs. I mean, and he, I would say, got to go to an organization that over the last 2.5 decades, 25 plus years, has been considered not just one of the better organizations in football, but in all of professional sports in North America. The Ravens are a high-level operation. Now, they were in trouble. He got there. He saved them. But they've been the number 1 seed multiple times and been KO'd. One year, Derrick Henry ran for like 400 yards on him. A couple years ago, the Chiefs just embarrassed them. I mean, 17-10, absolute joke. They had no business not winning it. But like until he does it, he's won these MVPs. He puts up these incredible stats. Like he's kind of falling under that category of like something happens in the playoffs. Like what is going on? This is not the same guy. Now, last year for the first time, in the second half of that game against the Bills, started to look more like the Lamar Jackson we get used to seeing the regular season. And it was like the Ravens had no business losing that game. They were the more talented team. And if Lamar Jackson doesn't play like he did in the first half with 2 awful turnovers, they probably win the game. Now, you can say, well, it's Mark Andrews' fault. It's like, well, they are a defense and quarterback dependent team. And when he plays bad, they got problems. Where, the Bills, that's why I'd have Josh Allen 1, is because he actually plays well in the playoffs. If Lamar Jackson plays the Chiefs in the playoffs, I will bet against Lamar Jackson. Doesn't mean he won't do it. Doesn't mean that it won't eventually happen. But I don't think you'd be really hard pressed to go, this is the year. This is the time. Just like most people with Rory McIlroy. You're stupid. Stay away from this one. Where Josh Allen has been the opposite. If you look at his numbers specifically against the Chiefs, played pretty well. I mean, a couple years ago, you could say he outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the 13-second game. And, unlike the Ravens, they've won a couple Super Bowls over the last 25, 30 years. The Bills have this thing hanging over their head, like kind of a tragic operation, right? Went to 4 straight Super Bowls, didn't win one. I mean, what's the likelihood if I took a team, 4 straight, whether it was World Series, NBA Finals, uh, Stanley Cups, Super Bowls, if I was like, you're going to get there 4 straight years, the likelihood that you're going to win one of them, especially a Super Bowl situation, which is a one games, 60 minutes, I feel like it's like 80+% that you're just bound to win one, and they never did. And then up until Josh and Sean McDermott got there, the Bills were terrible this century. They were a joke. And then they have literally played the Chiefs really well. They beat them during the regular season consistently. They played them well in the playoffs. And what makes it cool about these two guys is it's clear. They're all-time great talents. Lamar's got 2 MVPs. Josh just won his first MVP. If you tell me when their careers end, they combine for 6 MVPs, maybe they both get 3, right? I could see Lamar win another one. I could see Josh winning a couple more. I personally think Josh is the best player in the NFL currently, but like until they do it, it's going to be kind of tragic. Like if you're a betting man, you'd say, yeah, there's a decent chance at least one of them never even gets to Super Bowl. Think about that. That's the thing with Harbaugh and Kyle, who to me, and that's Jim Harbaugh, not John, who obviously won the Super Bowl, is I would have Kyle Shanahan is by far the most like tragic figure as a coach because he's the only assistant coach in my life, I would say any sport, who gets blamed for a Super Bowl loss. When you think about the 28-3 game, no one talks about Dan Quinn, who was the head football coach. No one ever mentions him. It's Kyle Shanahan's fault. It's Kyle Shanahan's fault. It's Kyle Shanahan's fault. Which, fair or not, he gets blamed for it. And then he's had multiple Super Bowls against the current dynasty, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, where he's had a lead in the fourth quarter. Hell, 2 years ago, he took him to overtime. For some reason, kicked a field goal, which probably not a great idea. But regardless, it's like the difference of Jim Harbaugh and Kyle is even if Jim Harbaugh never wins a Super Bowl, you can never not call him a champion because he built up a championship team at Michigan, which I would say over the last couple decades clearly was one of the best college football teams of his era. Loaded with NFL guys at every single position, didn't lose a game, beat Ohio State, beat Nick Saban in his last final game, and then absolutely destroyed a team loaded with NFL players in Washington and the future Alabama coach in the championship. But like up until that game, I would say Harbaugh fell under that of like, is he ever going to get it done? Is he ever going to win? Hell, he lost to his fucking brother in the Super Bowl. that's something that like is an extra additive of like, it's one thing. It's like, I lost to Belichick. I lost to Andy Reid. It's like, I lost to my brother in the Super Bowl. And let's face it, they were kind of getting their ass kicked until the lights went off. But the thing with Kyle, it goes, he doesn't have college football. He can't never say, well, I won a championship when I was 38 at Texas or when I led Florida to a championship. It's like, no, it's like, are you going to win with the 49ers? And who knows? Maybe he never gets back with the 49ers. Maybe he had his opportunity, it never comes. But you look at these figures, and this is what the business is built on. Obviously, the championships and the Bradys, the Mannings, the Mahomes, guys that win them. But you also need these other characters that are almost tragic. And I think Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyle Shanahan, and Jim Harbaugh are kind of filling that void. Uh, Last but not least, I didn't want to mention this before we get out of here, is that there's clearly a trend that agents are telling their clients, you don't need to run. When I was in the NFL, it would have been unheard of for a healthy player to not run the 40, especially a guy who was fast. I totally understand I remember Keenan Allen had like knee injury. Clear he wasn't going to run that fast, wanted no part of it. He eventually ran at like some private workout. It didn't go well, and it cost him, went in the third round. But still, guys, it felt like, I don't know if it was peer pressure, league pressure. You just did it. And there has been a clear shift to these agents going, we're not running the 40. And your guy's fast. Like, your guy can run. Like, we're not going to do it. Ashton Genty at his pro day, no 40. I watched Ashton Genty run. It looks pretty fast to me. But as someone in the league told me, yeah, it's just not worth it. If he runs a 4.52, it could cost him 10 spots and a lot of money. What I think Will Johnson at Michigan, who just had, I don't know if it was a pro day or like his personal workout, he's doing the short shuttle. He jumped 37 inches. He is an excellent athlete. Will Johnson is a really, really good player. When I think of Will Johnson, I think someone that is fast. Now, I don't know if he's like Deion Sanders running a 4.240, but I definitely don't view a guy that's like scared to run. And I think these agents realize now, like, what are you going to do? Not draft my client because he doesn't run a 40? I don't think we're that far away from getting to a point where it's one thing, like, if you tell me a guard doesn't want to run the 40, I'd be like, yeah, who cares? Whatever. It's like, you can see his explosion. You can see him on tape. Like, oh, do I need him to run a 40? It's not the end all be all. But when it comes to a wide receiver, when it comes to a running back, when it comes to a corner, I kind of want to know the 40. It's like, well, you got the data for, the programs. Like, yeah, I want to see him run a 40, what his number is. Part of it is so I can compare him to previous guys drafted, where he ranks to other guys that were drafted really high. Sauce Gardner isn't exactly, the fastest guy on the planet. Went in the top five. So if you're a really good player, even if you run a 4.52, it's not going to kill you. Now, if you run a 4.40, maybe it's going to help you. That's the other thing. When you don't run the 40, things can go well. If you're going to just approach it glass half empty, yeah, don't touch it. Well, part of it is there have been a ton of guys over the history of this draft. If you just look at the last 10, 15, 20 years that have run good times that couldn't play, that have made themselves a lot of money. Will Johnson can play. Honestly, at one point in time early in the season, he got banged up throughout the year. I think a lot of people thought, like, could this guy go like top five? Could this guy definitely go top 10? Now, depending on who you talk to, he's probably going to end up going somewhere like 8 to 20. Who knows? There's a lot of variables in this draft. Boards are all over the place. But if you told me that he ran well, he ain't going to plummet like a rock in the ocean.